world where education is often boxed in by rigid standards and inspections, how do progressive schools not only survive, but thrive? Today, we're taking you to Fairgreen, a beacon of innovation nestled inside of Dubai's sustainable city, where David Gerber is doing things differently. Against the backdrop of the UAE's stringent educational standards, Fairgreen is using these standards as a springboard for holistic education and sustainability. Let's jump into the episode. So I kind of want to set the stage for our audience and let them know our story. So I met David when I was in the UAE doing some work with schools with Toddle. And consistently when I was in schools in the UAE, I kept hearing the same thing over and over again. We want to innovate. We want to do IB right. We want to, try these things. And the big but that stood in the way was the ministry requirements or the national requirements. And this is consistently a problem I hear all over the world. But when I met you, David, you were like, no, it's not a problem. It's an opportunity. So I really want to dig into your mindset, your practices, and how you're doing it differently.
So I'd say first and foremost, the big requirements for the UAE are the same thing that we really want to do too. Right? The UAE really wants to be an innovative place. They want to do what's best for society, for their society, and what's best for the future of their citizens. So I think you mentioned mindset there. Coming with that mindset that everybody wants the best for everybody in society, I think is where we're coming from first. But then kind of getting into the nitty gritty of what is happening here in the UAE. They have an annual inspection. It's generally an annual. A group of 4 to 5 teachers come in, ex-teachers come in, and it's similar to that Ofsted model of inspection. And they have their framework for what they think is really good for teaching, right, and for schools. And so based off of that framework, they'll come in and just make sure that schools are generally going to those guidelines of that framework. I think as school leaders, we feel that it's very data heavy, that it's very much focused on some quantitative aspects of education, which I think is a major part of that pedagogical debate is how do you balance quantitative versus qualitative data, right? That focus on data is really the main way that they can inspect schools. They look at their English, math, science scores. And because they have this, it's like generally a week of being in the school. They only have that short amount of time and being in the school, so they really have to just dig into those numbers. And I've been in the area for what now? Like 12 years. Yeah. So I've kind of seen what they really want to do as far as their progression of innovation. I've seen it when I first was here 12 years ago, that they were focused on science, reading, writing, math, and very little else. And now, as I see that progression, they're starting to look at things like well-being of schools and the well-being of students. Are schools aware of their students' well-being? Are the schools aware of the transdisciplinary skills, some of the learning skills that are important? They are, yeah. So they have whole learning skills sections of the inspection framework that they've started to add. And this is kind of this migration. It's when you're thinking about IB schools, and when you're thinking, I'm currently working with an IB school. When you're thinking about what is important in the future of our students, we've known that transdisciplinary, those 21st century skills have been important since the 1990s, early 90s. But now they're paying attention, right?
Right.
Where in 10 years ago, they haven't been. And there is little whispers of what's coming in the new framework for that inspection framework. And it's even more so, even more closely related to an understanding of students' well-being has a massive impact on how well they do in science, reading, writing, and maths. And what we try to be very intentional with, the why is not to answer the test. The why is not to get high scores on the test. The why is to inquire. They have the knowledge and the skills to go deeper into their inquiry, right? And I don't think that the ministry disagrees with that.
I think is a mindset shift that is very broadly transferable here.
Yeah.
And it's that when I talk to schools about things like national requirements and even IB authorization requirements, for whatever reason, teachers and leaders get hung up on the what. What do they want us to deliver? What do they want us to perform? What boxes do we need to check? And I think in any of our school practices, when we're caught on the what, then it's not going to be intentional. What I'm hearing again and again with you is this idea of a shared intention. What is your goal? What is our goal? And how do they align? What is our shared
Absolutely.
why? And I think you're saying a lot of those things do overlap. So if you're focusing just on the requirement, you're really missing the whole point of it. So taking that time as a team, taking a time with your authorizing team to align behind your shared intention feels like a really valid use of time. Would you agree that that's something you've done when those teams have come to visit?
Yeah, and I would almost say that because they want it to be productive for you too. I mean, let's take it to the very, very, very miniature version of this, is that when school leaders come into the classroom and we're doing observations and we're doing, you know, and we're providing feedback to teachers, that it's our intention to work in collaboration, just exactly what you're saying, is that that's kind of just the macro level of it, is that we want somebody else to come in and tell us from your perspective as somebody that is working towards the betterment of your citizens in the UAE. We want you to give us feedback on how you think that we're helping the UAE. For the IB, we want the IB to come and give us feedback and tell us how you think that we're bettering students in the eyes of the IB. And I think as long as, I mean, maybe that is a little bit of a mindset shift, is that if you're always having that intention of getting feedback from multiple sources and then using that feedback to make it better.
So cool. It makes me think of something Kath Murdoch said in our interview. Is she says that there must be a symmetry in an inquiry-driven school between how the leadership leads and how the educators are teaching. And what an amazing model you're setting of saying, hey, we don't live outside of the box. We have parameters, just like teachers have curriculum that they've got to teach within. We have these standards that we have to exist within. But regardless of what those standards are, we can be grounded in intention. We can be grounded in real world problem solving, in why, in our beliefs as educators. That needs to permeate all that we're doing.
Yeah, 100%. And I do think, and this is, I think, supported by our local ministry, is that idea of innovation is that they want people to be kind of stepping their toe outside the box, and they want people to be, the schools to be pushing those boundaries of what you think is good for students, but then yet show the data to be able to support it,
to justify it.
Yes, absolutely. We want to work on our executive functioning skills, which is completely outside of the data parameters of our local ministry. But yet we're going to do almost like an action research of, okay, for the next academic year, when we work on our executive functioning skills, how does that impact the rest of the students' English, math, science and social studies, and Arabic and Islamic scores in general? Like that. And the ministry has shown that they are willing to support schools that are willing to be innovative like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
But it's finding that language, though. It's finding the language to communicate how your goals connect with theirs and what data set might bridge the gap between those two things. And that's more work. It's more onus on you, but it's not impossible to do.
hence the tabs and all, up on my computer and the spreadsheets that are on the
So I think
computer.
a lot
Yeah.
of administrators will empathize with this, but we started the call and David's video just crashed. He's like, I don't
Yep.
understand my internet. It's working really well. And then he looked and he had like 55 Excel spreadsheet tabs open.
Yep.
I love that.
Yeah. It kills us.
Today's episode of the School Leaders Project is brought to you by Toddle, your all-in-one teaching and learning platform made for teachers and by teachers. We started as a passion project in a school that thought that teaching tech should be as innovative as teaching teams, and we're now loved by more than 1,500 progressive K-12 schools all around the world. David, I'm curious when it comes to your team, because I'm sure you have some teachers who have taught in other schools in the region. Are there mindsets or skills that your team has to unlearn when they're working with you?
Hmm. Um, okay. Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, they do. And I mean, especially in our area, and I would say there's because of this major focus on the ministry guidelines, and almost this is maybe one thing that I generally don't agree with is that the this inspection is also attached to the fees and the fee structure of the schools, which
Oh.
which then yeah, gen automatically translates to higher inspection and then higher fees. Um, I'm glad that at our school we can be innovative. We can have a little bit looser of a structure to that. We are focused on having a great inspection, but also we are focused on being a school that is mindful to the financial situations, and we're sustainable in the profit area of that whole sustainability mindset. But then teachers coming from other schools that are hyper focused on those test scores, and they're hyper focused on um, like especially on middle leadership is really strained because they have to actually look and dig into the data. So they're teachers and they're going through the challenges of everyday teaching, but then they're also responsible for digging into the data and analyzing the data and coming up with conclusions, and then and implementing some of those conclusions and some of the next steps. But there's so much stress that's involved in that, and so much stress on other school leaders that because we have to do these and we have to get into these parameters and we have to get a certain amount of students up to this level, that they kind of forget what the importance of relationships, and they forget the
Hmm.
importance of when I'm afraid that my students aren't able to get there, then oftentimes they'll butt up to a barrier of, okay, well, why didn't your students get there, and the kind of the finger shaking. So we have teachers that are coming in like that and kind of feeling like, oh man,
Hmm.
um, if I don't get there, I'm going to have a tough conversation with my leadership. And yeah, and we've had, hey, so and so, I want to chat with you about your student data, and that automatically causes fear.
Panic.
Yeah, um, but now I think we have we have very much a well-being mindset at the school, that as school leaders we do want to work with our teachers. We want to I think school leaders want to work with leadership too, and they want to build up. Everybody has that professional relationship and professional understanding that everybody wants the best for their students. Let's
Hmm.
just look at barriers, and so that I think that fear is kind of set aside. But I mean, to answer your
Yeah.
question, yes, that's one of the things that we've kind of had to undo, is that fear of data conversations and fear of, and it's less of an accountability, it's more of an understanding conversation. We noticed that some of your reading scores tanked this year. Tell me about it. Well, can you draw up a story, draw me a picture, write a story about why that's happening until what's some of the qualitative data that you can provide to be able to back up some of that quantitative data.
So,
Oh,
to me, it's just this shift of culture. So, a culture of judgment versus a culture of curiosity. And that when we're examining our data, it should be a, I wonder why, not a, what did you do? Uh,
yeah,
and that's how we want our students to feel assessment capable, not why didn't you get a perfect score, but tell me what happened here. So I think again, it's just this mirroring, this symmetry that what we're doing in the leadership is going to happen in the classroom. So whether we're
yeah,
implicit or explicit in our culture, like if that's what our culture is going to be. So it sounds like you're very, very intentional about the culture of your school.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's interesting. I feel like I'm being informed by people that have come to Dubai and taught in Dubai and then left, and then they didn't have to do data, but they chose to do data.
Nice.
And then when they were choosing to do data, what kind of intentionality did they have behind that? And when they chose it, like what kind of data were they looking at? What processes were they looking at? I mean, yeah, I mean, kind of like what you're saying is that you do want to mirror that. I'm talking about this with you. I would love for you to have these same conversations with your students.
Every conversation is an opportunity to model our beliefs and our values. Totally. At Fairgreen, sustainability kind of isn't everything that you do, both environmental sustainability, emotional sustainability. So can you kind of set the stage for us of where your school is located, and how sustainability has become such a central tenet for you?
So school is located in the middle of I mean when I this is a global podcast, so when you're thinking of Dubai and the UAE and people that are I used to live in Bellingham and outside of Seattle, Washington, which is extremely environmentally minded. Um, and but then when people are thinking about the UAE, they're not necessarily thinking about the environment and
Mm.
sustainability, right? But the area where we live is and work is called the Sustainable City. It's a project net zero area, so the homes that are in this area, the residential homes that are in this area, are solar powered. The project of having a water filtration system like a natural river that was running through the middle of the sustainable city to be able to filter all the water from the community. So it's a city, it's an area that's built on the idea of sustainability of people, planet, and profit. The planet, I think that we all understand planets and sustainability, but also people sustainability and providing social spaces for everybody to get together. Also providing spaces for people to work out and be fit, and the profit sustainability that there are businesses that are on within the residential areas that they can go to, that businesses help to pay some of the fees for the residents, and the residents go and help support all of the businesses that are there. Um,
Cool.
I just found out this week is that so the school is within the sustainable city. I just found out this week that the school is actually bigger than what the amount of students that they can generalize are in the residential areas there. So they wanted to provide a school that is more than sufficient for the students that are in the residents as well, and for it to be a biking distance, for it to be something that,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So I mean, we're growing now, but we have, I would say, most of the life of the school, we have more bikes outside the school than we did have cars. Yeah. Oh,
That's so cool.
and it's fantastic that um, up to a certain grade that students can leave just on their own. They can walk back home to school or back home after school. Like it is that it's that, and I think, I mean, if I'm talking to or if other people from other areas, that's normal. I used to live in Germany, and I remember some of my students were taking the train home after school, and so that level of agency is normal for other places, but it's not in Dubai. Um, but yeah, so
Mm.
it, it's a great area that tries to be very holistic, and I think they're doing it really really well. Tries to be holistic on what they view as good for human beings.
Well, because sometimes
So
we get a pretty narrow definition of sustainability. Just like the
absolutely.
kids think sustainability, they think, I'm going to recycle.
I came to the school, I am very much a environmental sustainability person. I believe that, and especially in an educational setting, that environmental sustainability already gives you the platform for meaningful action, right?
Mm.
That if you really want students to learn how to write purposeful letters, write them to the cafeteria to get rid of plastic,
Cool.
write them to the local businesses to get rid of their plastic bags. Like that, if you have that environmental sustainability, it's great for education. Yeah, like the meaningful action. But the part that I wasn't as aware of is the social emotional
The
sustainability.
well-being. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, um, and and the impact that that has on education
Mm.
what and and I would say on students, teachers, leadership, and community, and the rest of the community. Like every layer, if you're paying attention to that well-being sustainability aspect, that will touch every single heart in your community.